Happy to have you all here. Welcome to our SingleFeeder seminar webinar showing you and introducing you to the system. I'm Matthias, owner of SingleFeeder, and I'll take you through this presentation. First of all, I'd like to show you what's in this webinar for you. In this webinar, I'll show you how to drastically reduce the complexity in your documentation projects, how to easily manage your translations, also multilingual translations, and how you can quickly compile new documents from existing modules or texts that you already have. What's my background? First of all, to just show you what I have been doing in the past. I've been working as a freelance technical author for more than 20 years, and I've been doing many multilingual projects, writing the documentation and working it into all the different languages. When doing that, I found out that there was a big need for a system to help me in doing that, and so I searched the market and I couldn't find anything that would suit me in terms of functions and in terms of costs. The existing system is very expensive, far too much for me as a kind of single person, self-employed freelance worker. So that is why I decided to start and build my own system. To do that, I just teamed up with someone who could code, and we started by doing the system for ourselves, really for our own use. And about a year ago, we got to a point where we said this is so well developed now and so mature that we could choose it or show it to other people. And that's what we've been doing so far, and that's what we are here for. So before we just look at the system, let's see how it is set up. What is the cornerstones, so to say? First of all, we've got a so-called smart database, what we call it. It's quite smart because it does not only handle documents, it also handles sentences. And that gives you a lot of opportunity and different types of access to what your database holds. So you can have all the references, you can manage your translations and the documents. We've got an authoring support, of course. We know that. We call that the SingleFeeder satellite. We do that. I'll show you in a minute how that works in practical life. Of course, you can work with templates and modules and so on. You know that if you work in the industry. This is something I don't have to tell you much about. And the database overview gives you an easy access to manage your documents quite nicely. You have an overview all the time. What's used where can you access the documents? And as I said in the beginning, we have a smart database, so that means we have a list of all the sentences in the database that you use in your documents and the respective translations. And this is why we were actually able to integrate a translation memory into the system. So it's a multiple access here which you have. It's not a full translation memory, but in the work with the program you can actually use all the 100% matches straight away. Okay, so let's leave it at that and move into the software. This is the SingleFeeder user interface. On the left hand here you can see a preview of documents if they're opened, and on the right hand you have the overview and the access to your database. This is split up into different tabs. Here at the top you see, first of all, you have the documents. You can have text modules, you can have text blocks, images, associated files. This is used to handle your translation. We have a terminology function, search functions, and a settings tab which gives you access to the database. We'll come to that in a minute. First of all, let's have a look at how to organize your documents in the database, and this is something that you probably know very well from your Windows file system. You can arrange everything in folders there. Here, as we don't have folders in the database, we call this categories. Same thing. You can freely organize this however you want to. And I have a sample documentation here of a virtual product, which is some fans, and I'll use that as an example to show to you how this whole thing works. We can have a look at one of the manuals here. This is all the manuals that we have. It's different products and different manuals, and as you see here, quite a lot. The products have different versions, they have similarities. So if you do all that, you have a whole list of different types of manuals, different types of products, all listed up. A great bunch of different documents, and later on I'll show you how we did that in a modular concept. First of all, if I look at these documents here, I get to see what is inside them down here. First of all, this is a manual, and here in the image tab I can see which types of images we have in them and where they are used. So now if I, for example, wanted to know where this picture, what it looks like and where else it is used, I can go to this tab here, show this in database image view. Now you see at the top we have changed tabs into the image view of the database, and that gives me a list of all the pictures which I have in this category, and here is the one which I've just selected. And again, at the bottom I can see the reverse view showing in which documents all this is actually used. I have more information available on that image. If I select this button here, show me the image as such, I have a view here, first of all, of which languages I have available for this image, which languages it can be used for. In this case, I have only two. I've got a German version, or you may say a European version, for that image, and at the same time I have an English version, which is a different image. And so depending on the output language of my documents later on, SingleFeeder will either insert the German version or the English version. I could add more language versions here if I wanted to. So that's just the brief overview. If we look at the documents, here again we have a detailed view, and this tells us something about the document and its translation status. In the German column here, which stands for DE, we see the document is of course complete, has a total of 1500 and something words, and for example next to it you can see the status of how much of this has been translated into English. 72% have already been sent to translation for English, and we still have a missing amount of about 400 words. Here at the bottom, a little more information on the document. We know this was created end of last year. It was last changed only a couple of weeks ago. So this is an overview. Now, as I said, we have all these documents here, which are quite large, and a big number of different documents. Now, what I'll do now is I'll introduce you to the modular concept. As much of these documents have lots of things in common, we said we could modularize this, and this is what we've done here. We've set up again a design of folders showing us where holding the different chapters in our documents. For example, here we have one chapter about safety, which has 3 text modules in it, and with these I can cover all safety aspects which I have to have in my system. Same applies for technical data, setup of the system, connections, use, and so on. So now what we've done here in this modular concept, I have a template for each of them, and now I'll just take this one, which is an empty template, and I can right mouse click it, and here at this point I have this option, open this in Word for editing, which is what I've just clicked. Now my Word editor will open and show me the document. The document has got some variables which I can select here. I don't do that, I'll just confirm the selection, and then I will have to pick up the document. I'll just wait for Word to open. May take a moment. Here we are. Let me just drag this over. Here it comes. So the document should be opening now in this. So here we are. This is it. Has a little title page, set up for a table of contents, and in this case only 2 placeholders, got no text in it. But that is what we can change now. I'll just delete this so that we can put in new text. One thing, as I mentioned before, is that we have the SingleFeeder satellite, the authoring system. Let me just activate this. I'll do that by clicking, by using a key combination, a hotkey, and this gives me a search window into my database. And here I can just enter a search term. Let me enter. This is German, by the way, so but as it's an only an example, I think that's not going to make much of a difference. I've just put in now a search term, and it'll give me the results straight away. My computer is not very fast, as you may have noted by now. It takes also quite a while to react. And so this is my search term here, and here at the bottom I got the results. All the sentences that include that type of, or that search term. And if I highlight one of these, I also get a highlight of the respective document where this phrase is used. And if I click on that, I get a preview of that document with all the text around it. So that's a very helpful function, giving me the context. And now if I want to use this, I could just highlight this, copy the selection, go back to my Word, and then I can insert the copied text here. It's not closing as it should. Here it is. And now I can easily insert what text I used to have. This is text from a different document, so this is why it's not formatted. However, this is just to give you an impression on how quickly you can find texts from your document. Now, you may have noticed that up here we have a new or a SingleFeeder menu bar, and that allows me to have direct access to the different or the main functions from the database. And in this case here, I could, for example, select documents or modules which I have prepared in my database to use them in this document here. So I'll just wait for that window to open. As I'm live streaming, my computer is quite loaded currently. However, this is the window which I've just shown you, and I'll just insert a couple of modules from the safety, maybe put in some technical data and maybe a connection thing. Now I could swap this around if I want to. For example, if I say I want to have the technical specs at the end of my document, I can have that. I can shuffle them around here as I need, and now I just go for select, and that will actually now go and paste all the documents into all the modules into my document. That's going to take a minute because now Word has to go to the database and select all that all these documents, and paste them into the template which I have opened. However, that's going to carry on. You can see it working in the background in a minute. We just wait for that to happen. Here we see the first bits coming in. And there we are. So this is it. Now we've seen it's inserted all this text, and again, that's our picture from the mains blog, the specs, and the safety notes. So now what we see here is that we've used the comment function to mark certain areas of the text. As it were, these are variables. These text mark variants. So we have different types of models, of fan models, as are described here. And in this chapter, we have got all the information that we need for all the models. So for example, some of them have a heater on, so that's why it's got this little fire warning, and some of them have a high stand, they may fall over, so they've got this little warning. And of course these two warnings will only apply to the respective products. The ones that are not marked here at the bottom and at the top are applicable for all of the models, so we'll always have these in our documentation, but only sometimes this and sometimes that, or even both. This is marked here by the type of variant, by the name. We have categorized it so we can select later on. So let's imagine we've done the document now. It's complete. We've put in all the text that we want. So I go to this option here, store the document into the database, and I give it a name, showing, call it modules for the time being. I can say it's going to be a document, and this is where I want to have it in the database. I just click save, and now it'll store it there and show have it in the database. I can swap back to the database and just wait for it to arrive here. Also, that takes a minute. By the way, I've got this little mark set here, which means that these translations are approved for use in the satellite. This is a status that you can set to select or deselect individual sentences or document content to be shown in the satellite. Okay, so it's reloading now the document in Word. We can skip that, and if I update this here, it should also give me the document here in a minute. There it is. And now we can see down here again, these are the images that we have, and here you will now find the text modules that I have inserted. It's got some variables, I think. Well, maybe it doesn't. And it has versions, however. Now that was the variables. Here we are with the different variables that we've seen in the specifications. Okay, so now let's assume we want to have this document translated. That's very easy to do. I'll just need to right click it here, and then I have this menu entry, export for translation, and doing that will take me to this translation tab here, and all I need to do is just select the target language. The document is in German, so I'll have it translated into English. This is the document I want to select, and here I will say open the Excel file. We do all the translations in Excel. I say include existing translations so that I can see the document in full, and just in case that I want to have, and I already have parts of that document in translation and I want to fast forward it here, I'll go for that. I'll select these again, and I have an option to show terminology. If I have terminology in my background, and I don't want to restrict text lengths now, so I don't do that. All I do now is click the create button, and it will create the Excel file. This will give me now a place to choose in my file system. I'll just select on where to place that. I'll go here in this this folder, and now it's going to export the Excel file to this folder, and it'll open it so that we can have a preview of it to see what that translation file looks like, and I can give you a little explanation on what that's on how to work with that. By the way, we use the Excel files in order to give everybody access to them. Everybody has Excel, can use it, and it's easy for everyone to use. We don't have any special formats and so on. So what we have here now is we have one column with the German text and one column with the English text. I've just seen there's some mistakes here in our database. We've got some of the German stuff translated. However, quite clearly this here needs to be done. This is German and it has to be translated into English. Very easy. This can also be done in external translation memories, by the way. You just export that whole column, send it to the translation memory, and then paste it into here. And so that's it. So we've got the pre-translated parts as well, and now we simply have to add what's missing. As we heard or saw before, it's not very much, just a few things. Okay, so if this were done, I would simply save it, and then I would go back to SingleFeeder and say import the translation. Again, select the language. I could localize translation marks, which is set here by standard, and then I click import and it'll come back in. One thing which I can show you now already is that if I check this in my details view here, you will see that this has already gone to 100% because it's all been exported for translation. Again, this is the 475 words which were missing in the original, and that is what I still had to translate. So that's the quantity of translation which is missing. Okay, so now what we need to do, let's assume we've got all this translated. The only thing that we need to do is we can export it now, and this allows me here again to publish it. Now I can do right mouse click, get the context menu, and I can select the language which I want to go for, and again I can select how I want to do this, as a PDF file or as a Word. I'll select PDF for this moment here. Now obviously as we haven't actually imported our translations, we get a default message telling me that some of the translations are missing. No problem. Here we can select some of the stuff as we need to. For example, let me say this is going to be the model X3. So X3 means this is a fan with a stand-up version without a heater, and this is going to be important now because now I have to select this for my modules to be included. As we saw earlier, we had the different safety notes, and here in this case I don't need the H, which stands for heating. I just have got to use the X type. So now I click select and the document will be compiled in the background. Again, I select the output file destination, and in this case I'll just abbreviate that number, that proposed name, which is usually composed of the number of varieties that I have. So now we gotta wait a moment for that file to appear. However, I can swap to that folder in my file system so that I will be able to open the file, the PDF, once it has turned up, so that I can show you the result. So far we've seen how to import. You simply save a document into the database. That's all you need to do to import it. It'll do all the segmentation and all that pattern. It'll recognize the images by itself and sort them out into the database by itself. And then we've seen how to find texts from the database using the authoring assistant, and how to compile new documents by putting texts from the satellite in, and by putting modules into the document. And then we could save it to the database as a new document, and we have had it translated, all that so far. Now we're just doing the output part, and so that gives you quite a good approach on how to do that. So now this is done. I will just open the document in PDF to show you the result, and then we could have a quick look at the other two functions. Now we've seen how the text modules are set up. We can drastically reduce the number of documents that we have. Actually, now I have 18 different models of this fan, and 4 different types of manuals for them, which are these different ones here. And now if I had a conventional approach, I would have to write a 4 documents actually for each of the models. So this is a user's manual, quick start, a repair manual, and a service manual. So that would mean 18 times 4. I would end up with 72 different documents. I was able to reduce them all to 4 different documents, and using these modular modules here I was actually able to join up everything in only a couple of modules, so that I have got all my information, all my content ready at one glance. I just need to work on one document, and I can then easily use that and select what I have to show in my output documents by selecting the variants that I need. So this is a document. Of course, the title page was not translated properly, and this is why we see these not found here. But here we already see some of the English parts, and you see now these 4 safety notes that we had in the beginning turned out to only 3. The one with the fire one was not in here. The same applies here. There were a couple of more bullet points in the original one. The misuse and these kind of things, all of that was there. And here, for example, now you can see this is the English version of that picture which was put in, and that's it. Don't worry about this here. This is just a mistake in our database. We should actually need to fix this at some point in time. And again here, same thing. So that's it. Basically, this is how the document is then created. One more thing I'd like to show is this search function here, which is quite helpful. Because usually if you start working with a system like this, you've got a big collection of documents. They're all maybe a bit messy, different types of stuff, and you know there's a lot of content that is actually identical, but you have different descriptions for it. And then you want to start harmonizing it all. And this is something that the database helps you very much with. First of all, the primary function for this is using this here, show the most used sentences. If I click this button, I'll get a list of all the sentences which I have in the database, listed by their frequency of use. So this is something that's very helpful for me to start looking for similar content. So we see that, for example, here. This is something that we have used quite often in our documents, lots of different stuff. This one as well, and this one. These two, for example, are used very closely together. Obviously, they are the same number, so this is something that we could actually start working on. So now that would mean I could open one of these texts and create a module from this. Actually, in this case, we've done that. So if you hadn't used any models, you would, for example, see that in all of these different documents, we've got the same sentences. High reuse rate, very good. Now, just to enable us to put it together, that's the point where you would start. Another thing is that if you go to the search term here and search for a certain text, I will just search for a word which I know is in the system, and unfortunately this is German, so a bit difficult for you to read. This sentence says the fan turns at the lowest stage, and this says, for example, the fan runs at the lowest speed. So basically these two sentences are the same. However, the difference is the now. Now you may say, I want to harmonize these two. You just need to mark them, and then it allows you to merge these two texts into one, and you don't have to worry about which documents they are used in. You can simply select which one you want to carry on using. If there is a translation, you can choose if you want to carry on with the translation or delete it, and it'll just need to be translated again. So that is an easy way to harmonize and simplify the content of your database. You can also go along and say you could do it with these two here using a variable, for example, in speeds. Same here. So this is quite similar. We've done this here. For example, you see this sentence here has a variable in it and this sentence doesn't, so I might just as well join up these two and say I always want to use the one with the variable, and that'll cut it down quite easy. Another thing that I can do is I can edit them in all documents. So I could go along here and say I want to change this sentence. This will open a window and allows me to edit it. For example, if I wanted to go like this, I wanted to have this type of spelling here. That will be an easy way. I can also work with the translations here if I have them. I can change them as well. So that's quite a good approach to kick out typos, for example, from all your documents in a single go. So that allows you to harmonize everything. And if you've used wrong terms here or you want to harmonize your terminology, again, quite easy. You search for a term, it gives you a list of everything, and then you can just work on these. However, that takes me to the terminology bit. This is something that you can use as well. It's not a full-featured terminology tool, but you can put in what you want to have. You can have your positive terms here that are marked in green. You can have the negative terms for them, and it'll give you an overview. We've separated this from the document and put it into the database. If I click this button here, find sentences with negative terminology, it gives me a list of what I should work on in all my work. So, for example, I wanted to have this. I know this is the wrong has a wrong word in it. I should use a different word. Again, I use that button, change in all sentences, and now it tells me what's the wrong word, and here it tells me the right word, which I should use. So I can just change that now in the database, and that'll clean up my use of terminology. Very easy, very straightforward, and you can do that whenever you have a little time. You can check this list, and so this doesn't stop you from saving documents into the database. We've done that because we didn't want to stop our working habits, our work process. When we write something, you want to quickly save it into the database, and we don't want to be troubled about the wrong wording and things like that during the saving process. We've got our mind on processing the writing, on processing on the work steps, and so on, and that is what we don't want to have interrupted. So this is why we've separated this in the way to adjust it. Okay, and then there's one more thing which is also interesting to know, which is here these performance indicators. This gives me an overview of my database and actually an overview of how good my documentation is. In this first bit, it shows me the figures that I have in the database. This database has 211 documents, 700 pages, and 7,000 or 8,000 sentences, roughly. Last year, I have added 188 documents. So this is my growth over the last 360 days. I've done published about 500 pages and 5,000 sentences, which I can have. So that's shows me what I've done in the past. And here, this is actually the very interesting figure. It tells me my repetition rate, my reuse rate. And in that reuse rate, I have the way to check or cross-check with my products. If I know that my products use 50% or 80% identical components and have identical procedures, then I know that my reuse rate should be somewhere in that range as well. If it isn't, I can do some more work in improving it. Every time that I reuse text, you will know that it'll cut my costs. It'll cut my costs in editing, in cross-checking, in copywriting, in translation, and so on. And then here I have the percentage of pages that are translated into the different languages and the number of target languages which I have selected in my database. Okay, so that is actually the quick overview. There's a couple of more functions, status, variables, on more details to drill into. I'll probably do that in different webinars. If you like to see that, join me again. However, for the time being, this was just a brief overview in how to create documents, how to save documents to the database, how to run the translation process, how to select the respective output that you want for the documents, and I think that shall be it for the time being. You can use the chat function in order to ask questions. I'll be online for a while, just waiting for your feedback. If there's any questions, feel happy to ask. Write me an email, write me a comment. I'll be answering and I'll be coming back to you. So far, so good, and see you later. Goodbye for now. Okay, this was 44 minutes.